Welcome to Baseball Blueprint, your home for all things player development.
All right. So we're going to be playing around again on Baseball Savant and Fangraphs. We might pull up some film later, depending on where we go. But again, another long-form video where we try to dive into a little bit more on the metric side, get a better idea of what we're looking at, stuff like that, what we can identify as helpful pieces of these metrics and stuff that we can maybe try to avoid moving forward. So one of the things that I was recognizing the other day was the success rate added stat, which I really like. And I was thinking about it, and we talk a lot about sample size bias, right? Like if you have a player who has more attempts, obviously we have a better idea in theory of what kind of defender that player is because there's a larger sample size, more true to who the player is in theory, right? Less attempts. Also with how these plays are scored, because we've talked about it in the past, can skew the scoring of a player. So for example, Jimenez has a, plus 21 OAA. So he's leading the league right now. And obviously catchers don't have an OAA, but we've got a plus 21. So in theory, the best defender in terms of ground coverage and range, Andres Jimenez, because that's what OAA is really trying to evaluate. Now, when we look at his success rate, he had a 79% success rate. StatCast had his estimated success rate at 75, which means he has a plus 4% success rate added. I think these numbers give us a little bit clearer of a picture about just the growth that we can see player to player. Now, I think positionally it should change. I think based on the reps you get, the success rate added obviously can change. But I don't know if it'd be fair to put it like some arbitrary number and say, 79% success rate at second base is great. I don't think that makes sense. But showing that the success rate that you've added, I think there's a lot of value there. And I think a lot of this is dependent on the types of balls you get hit. But I think even more so, the success rate added shows it shows a lot about how much of a game changer you are. These OAAs, I mean, in theory, I know this doesn't happen, but in theory, you could just get a bunch of casual ground balls and just be a vacuum, which means there's a ton of value there too. But if the success rate's, 73 and you're getting to a 76 like Swanson, it shows your consistency. It shows how much better you can provide based on a comparison between your peers. They're thinking his peers would field the balls that he fielded at 76% at a 73%. So he was 3% better, 3% success rate added from the average defender. And I like the way the OAA stuff is scored, but again, when you have the sample size bias, you don't really get the clarity that I think you get from success rate added. Now, it's interesting. I don't know if cross-positional comparisons are fair when it comes to the success rate added. I need to learn more about exactly how we would do cross-positional comparisons. I mean, we could do DEF, but I still think it's an unfair way to go about things. It's the most fair in my opinion right now. Maybe FRV could be up there, but even so, it's really, really hard to compare a left fielder to a second baseman and stuff like that. So let's take a look at the players who have added the most success to their game and kind of take a peek at what they're doing. So the first one is Michael Ciani. Who we've looked at before, and he's a very, very talented young player. And now we look at his +7, and that's wildly high, right? If you're adding a success rate over 5, it's pretty impressive. Five and above is awesome. And PCA is a guy who didn't play the whole year last year, and he was still at a +5% success rate added. Now, like I mentioned, that sample size is important. I think the success rate added, in a way, negates the sample size bias that we see in OAA. But on the other hand, it almost accelerates it because let's say PCA had way less attempts. I don't know. I don't have his attempts here, but we can look it up. Let's say he has way less attempts, but he just killed it, knocked it out of the park in those attempts, and he's showing that he's 5% better than the expected. Well, throughout the entirety of a season, maybe that starts to dwindle. Maybe that drops. Who knows, right? But I think that's something that would be a worry, something to keep in mind when you're checking out success rate added. But again, on the flip side, if you're looking at OAA and it's okay, PCA's at a +14. If we look at these in conjunction with each other, I think we get a much clearer picture. Well, he's a +14. He's definitely providing way more outs than the average player, especially at his position, right? I mean, the center fielders tend to bring in a lot of points anyway, but super, super high numbers from him. Plus the added of the +5 success rate added, that's pretty impressive, right? And so let's go by a different position here. Let's go let's go first base. They don't get enough love anyway. So we'll go first base. We'll check out the OAAs, which if you've seen our past video on like prep step techniques with different positions, we know these guys. Walker's a post-contact airborne guy. Santana lands post-contact, but he's kind of leaning a lot to his right. He'll mix it up actually a decent amount. It seemed like he's working on stuff too. So you look at the success rate added though, right? Yeah, +4, that's huge. And we look at where those points are being added from, and we've talked about this in the past, but working to your right, especially with left-handed batters, right? Being able to cover that 4-hole, because now we can't effectively take that second baseman and fill him in the 4-hole or even shade him in the shallow right because of the shift limitations, because we can't take our shortstop across the bag to the middle. So the farther we can take that second baseman, the better. But if we have first baseman who can cover that hole, that gives you a whole lot more success, right? And it's funny, we look at the success rates, the true success rates of these players, and they're all over the place. Like you look at Joe Connor with the Pirates, he's at a +2, but then you look at his success rate, and it's like, okay, he's above average, like he's making more plays, and OAA actually confirms that too. So there's value there, and I think that just showing that you can play above average is really important. And even the guys who aren't, right? Let's look at the guys who aren't above average. It happens in reverse too. If you're like a -5 and below, it's really, really tough to provide a ton of value, and that matches up with the OAA. So I like that the success rate added allows us to kind of negate a little bit of the sample size bias in terms of just bulk building or bulk losing OAA points, and I like that OAA allows us to negate some of the success rate added bias where the difficulties of the plays are played in, and you get a little bit more clarity on where the mistakes are being made, stuff like that. So let's take a look at our Fangraphs leaderboard here, and this is everybody, and I'm using DRS, OAA, FRV, so let's go by DRS to start, just to get an idea of defensively who the kind of separators are, and we've looked at this before, but we've got a guy in Turang and Jimenez, who both of them are really, really high level, and they're fun to watch, and their techniques are great. And I think one of the outliers that I say outlier, he's been an incredible defender. One of the outliers technique-wise that I like to look at is Matt Chapman. So if you've been a viewer of the channel before, you know I'm a proponent of a post-contact prep step. I like to see a more athletic base. I like to see guys flow into their move. Whereas we really don't see that a whole lot with Chapman. Chapman's going to be super wide based, like he might get a slight bounce. And so what we'll do here is let's take a look at him. Let's take a look at his technique, and we'll try to find a couple different plays. But remember, the best way to do this is to use MLB Game Day. You want to try to find a diving play. You want to use this here, and you want to use MLB Game Day. So here we go. We got 626. We're gonna go straight to MLB Game Day. That way we can find our 3D data. And so by doing this, we now have an idea of Chapman's prep step. Just confirming, 326, 26, okay. Oh, that's 2025. Hate to see it. There we go. So let's take a look at this play that Chapman made. And they don't have everything, so they might not have this play up there, but usually they have the highlight reel plays, especially for bigger name guys like Chapman. So we should, here we go, Horner grounds out to Chapman. Let's watch it first. Sorry about the volume if you can hear this.
On the ground, Chapman picks it up, throws.
Pretty impressive. Let's see if we get a prep step angle here. Yeah. Take a look at this. We'll see this in 3D too. Let's pause this, bring it back to here. See where his feet are lined up? We'll go in 3D and see if he's squared up to home or squared up to the line, but I've got a feeling he's probably squared up to the line. His first baseman's very clearly squared up to the line, even though he's in right-handed hitter stakes, right? He wants to expand that range. The middle, he's a little bit more squared. He looks angled, but I'm not so sure if that's what they want. Let's take a look. Let's take a look. It's funny, he's got a plus runner and Horner too, so he's got to get rid of this ball. And we'll slow this down just to make sure. Sometimes the lighting on the field's a little odd. I do like this setup where it's kind of brighter. I wonder if they actually try to match that up with like how the day is. Look how low he gets. I mean, he goes past 90. Look at how low he drops his butt in when he takes a straight step. Jeez. Yeah, he's just stationary, then he goes. Let's see where the feet are. It's pretty even with the baseline. Maybe a little closed off, just slightly. That's still pretty good. Let's see how he makes his move. Yeah, so he's a guy, Evan White used to do this. If you guys have like old footage of Evan White, how you're so low and you kind of pull across your hips. It's interesting. I'm not so sure. Man, I just think about like the limited number of movers who could actually pull that off. That'd make it way more difficult to teach as a technique. Good pick by first baseman too. Yeah, I mean, and I think there are some pluses to this, right? And we talk about how we position ourselves based on depth too, right? So if you've got a third baseman, you're playing tight. I believe you should probably have your glove out further. You should probably be a little bit more tilted. Your posture should be a little bit lower, right? I'm still teaching a post-contact prep step at that point. I think that's faster to change direction, but we have to protect the ground in front of us. We're conceding our range to a degree when we cut depth, right? So let's prioritize that ball. That way we're making a choice at the very least. We're making a choice to defend the space in front of us as opposed to the spaces beside us. Whereas if we're playing back like this, I feel like I'd want him to be able to accelerate as quickly as possible to his extremities like this, Paul. I wonder, let's look at the exit velocity here. Let's try to find a similar ball on another third baseman who uses a different technique. This is at 86 at a 3-degree launch angle. So let's see how much ground he actually covers off an 86-mile-an-hour ball. It's bounced twice, it looks like. Let's see. Sinks in. Ball gets hit. 1, 2. I mean, the question that's in my head right now, and it's probably the question that's in your head too, is do other players get here without diving? Do other players get here in a more comfortable fashion, in a position to better make a throw? It always looks faster in 3D. I mean, so we're looking for something at 86, at 70 feet, 3-degree launch angle. And what would be sick, if anybody from StatCast gets a chance to see this, give us the direction of flight. If you give us a direction of flight and then maybe make that searchable on Baseball Savant, we could find like a ton more like comparable plays. That way we can cross-compare defenders and stuff like that. We could check out reaction time differently, right? We talk about how visuals impact our reaction time, stuff like that. So that's a pretty hard hit ball. Let's think of a third baseman here. Let's use this. Let's go by position here. Let's go to a third baseman. We want a third baseman here who is a freak defensively. We could say Arenado, but he's pushing years. And I'm not super familiar with his techniques. I'm pretty sure he's grounded. Bregman, maybe. Yeah, let's do Bregman. Let's do Bregman and see what he's doing. .722. Takes away a hit from Rooker. And I'm sorry with the long form, you have to like sit here and wait for me to search, but also it's more fun when you get to kind of like follow along and see how to like find where to go. And I know I missed stuff too, so I'm sorry about that as well. Like I definitely missed the Astros somewhere on here. There they are. But this is legit the process of how I find all of my videos and stuff like that. So On the edited ones, if you're wondering how I get this stuff, this is how I do it. Pena. Andujar. So this one Bregman makes a play on too. Let's see if you can find the diving play. No? Let's click that Bregman one then. We should be able to see technique here. 82, pretty similar exit velo. Not the right launch angle, not the right distance. Let's see if it's a... this ball should get the Bregman slower than what that other ball got to
Great play
Chapman
by
with.
Alex Bregman down the line.
Pretty good play. Let's see what he does. All right. And I've trained with some of the Astros infielders, and I know what they're not organizationally being taught a certain prep step technique, but most of the guys are favoring post contact. But they're not really worried about lateral movement. You know what I mean? It's been more like they're just squared up. Maybe I think in their eyes they're probably thinking like it's a visual thing instead of a ground coverage thing. But let's see if we can confirm that with Bregman's prep step. He looks pretty square to the line actually. Maybe even a little open. See, and that's the tough part with 3D. I can't tell. You can see the shadow under the feet. I can't tell for sure if he's getting airborne here. I'm going to assume he is because his momentum's coming up instead of sinking down. Guys who are grounded movers very often sink down into their legs. Like his right foot's off the ground there, but I don't know if that's him just picking it up and putting it down. It's a pretty good position. Where's his chest? Okay, let's see where his chest is when he's landing. Oh boy, it's trippy. It's taller. Yeah. Do you see the tilt from the shortstop's chest? I think that's, I don't know. I think everyone's a little different, but that might be too much, right? But that taller chest allows him to cover ground laterally a little bit quicker than a way tilted over one. Unreal play, man. Watch it again. Prep step. Yeah, it looks like he's airborne there. Like I said, I wish I had access to like True, or I know every organization has their own, like most anyway, have their own like film and data archive, but you've got to imagine like True Media or Synergy has these camera angles to where I could see that. It's a pretty sweet play, man. Pretty sweet play. So with him, yeah, the technique looks different, the spacing looks different, like the depth, right? I think a lot of it has to do with the player. Like he was at the dish. Chapman's playing a lot more depth. Interesting. And I want to check this out too. We've looked at this before, but some of the technique that you get from Siani, I think it's Siani, might be Young. Let's look at both. Jacob Young. .425. So I believe it was Young who was going like a stagger step, like stepping in, leaning. That's 724, 425. Nationals. Okay, let's see where this is. Here we go. 344 at 95, 22-degree launch angle. And so here's a question for you data guys, if you're out there. When we're taking into account catch probability, do you just use these numbers? Or are you also taking into account like direction and spin rate and stuff like that? Because I think that's, I feel like that's important. Then if we really want to get into it, like, are we focused at all on like seam shifted stuff? Like, what position is the ball in when it's being struck? And then as it flies, like, are we taking into account seam shiftedness and stuff like that, like pitchers do now? That would be a cool thing to look into. Actually, hold on. Let's watch the video first. The eyes are closed. Pretty cool.
Out to right
Right center gap.
Jacob Young tracking it into a dive. He has it. They're
Pretty
gonna throw
glitchy.
it to first.
Let's skip it. Let's skip it. We can watch it in 3D. Gore on the mound. Hernandez at the dish. Got some shadows here, but that's okay. We'll slow this down. It's gonna be tough to see contact with the names up there, but it'll be okay. Here's the delivery. Pitch. Yeah, it's Young who does like a hop. I mean, look at this. Angled hop, like on a slide to shallow left center and then to deep right center. Now let's think about that. That's so sick. Here's the catch. And he gets up and throws him out. Now, we've got Hernandez as a right-handed batter. And so we want to play our center fielder in general to the opposite field gap. That's where we've been playing our outfielders almost across the board. Now, there's going to be some changes based on the park, like the field, the situation. So, for example, with a runner on base, it might change things. You might want to like cover up the pull side gap differently, right? If it's a tight game, stuff like that. But in this scenario where he's slanted, where you see the feet are on a slide covering this space, and that puts him at an angle here. So he should be able to react well this way, but he's got momentum going in. Like when we watch this, there's the hop. Now he's landing post-contact. He's landing post-contact, and we can tell, it's hard to see the ball get to the bat, but we can tell just by how his body moves, because watch his foot. There's the hop. The left foot has not landed. The right foot plants. Watch it tuck. Tuck. Boom. And now look at the shape he's created. He's at a really, really nice 45, and he's accelerating, right? And so is this as fast as him like hopping the other direction and going to track down this ball? Probably not. But I think what he's trying to do here, and let's get a better angle. We'll change the camera here. So, positionally, we're playing full side gap. Deep left. Pulling the right fielder over. Right? Playing in line with the bases. Right? So we're not really hugging lines much. I see a lot of outfielders playing here on right-handed bats in this kind of scenario. I wonder if his depth is tighter than his comparatively. And they're saying, okay, we'll have him shade this way to cover this gap. And that's what other teams are doing. But right now he looks like he's got depth. It looks like he's deep. Must not see a lot of like shallow balls here. But when we watch this, keep your eye on center field. I'll pause it at contact. It's just after. Okay, now let's go to Young. Oh no, let me click it. So the ball is literally here. If you can see that there. Going over to Young. So the ball is midair. He's just landing now with his right foot. So he's very post-contact. I think in the outfield, you almost want to be that, like I say a frame, like a frame later than the infield. I don't know. I don't have a better way to time it besides just like yelling out arbitrary numbers and stuff like that. But this is something that can be addressed in like a video room. Like that ball is probably there now when he gets that move, right? So So sick. And I wonder, so we talk about this stuff with the infield a lot. Like, I heard Tyler Shoemaker say it. I don't think it was Tyler. Who was that? Somebody had said it at this past year's ABCA. It was Ty Blankmeyer. And so he mentioned, like, playing with one heartbeat as an infield. And he was talking about ground coverage and prep step and angles, right? And so if this guy's playing on this angle, and so in theory, if we've got Young playing on a slide, right? So he's playing to cover this ground. Because his prep step's taking him in here, so he's going to have a really accelerated jump here. And he's also going to have a slightly more poor but really good angle set to this area. He's giving up behind him to his right and a little bit shallow, just a hair. So if we look at his technique, I wonder if Rosario is a guy who's now going to be prep stepping on a different slide, or if he's just going to go standard. Oh, look at that. Oh, that's sick. Where's his feet set up? On a slide, aiming towards deep left center, which is where he's weak at right now because of his technique. And it also covers this ground. Now he gets burned down the line, but that's a low percentage play, right? We've got the line to help us with the percentage. Okay, now we flip that. Let's flip that. So now we've got what ground covered? Oh boy. Sometimes you gotta click the cameras a little bit. Okay. So now we've got him on a slide covering this space out here, this space here. This guy's covering this space here, this space here. Now what's open? Shallow here, depth there. Now, depending on the spray charts and the likelihood of a ball landing here versus a ball landing there and the damage that could be done, I wonder if they're going to be on an opposite slide and say, screw it. Like, this is a spot that's going to be a hit anyway. We're going to be on a slide here. Let's see what he does. This is Gallo. Dude, man's just squared up. Let's see where his legs are pointing. Oh boy, not what I'm looking for. They're pointed towards the gap. They're pointed towards this gap a little bit. So I guess the slide would be like faded here. But again, I don't know if it's not so obvious that it's being intentional. But look at that move. Look how direct. Boom. And watch him route correct. There he goes back. He's going back now. So sick. Back. We talk about efficient first steps, right? And in a perfect world, we have a perfect first step and a perfect route and a perfect catch, whatever. We don't see that ever, though. It is far more important to get this quick first step right off the bat. Like, that's too delayed. And he's not able to accelerate the same way. I think there's a reason why Dude Man in center is catching this, and it's not just his speed. His speed absolutely helps, but the technique's more clean. This ball's fading in towards Gallo. Now, is this his ball? Absolutely not. It's his ball, but I don't know if it's a do or die if he catches that, if he's positioned on the other side. So cool. So cool. Well, all right, y'all. That's fun. Like I said, these long form things can go a lot of different directions, and I just like to explore and have fun with it. So if you guys have anything you want me to check out, please comment, let me know. Put it in our infield or base stealing communities on X. Make sure you subscribe. Click the bell if you want to be notified when I post, stuff like that. So thank you so much for checking this out, and then let me know if you guys have anything I can do better or something else that I can look into that might be interesting. Thanks.